Virtualahan is breaking down employment barriers for people with disabilities and other disadvantaged groups using an impact formula that combines digital skills training and life coaching. We equip them with skills and a mindset to become competitive employees and entrepreneurs using the equalizing power of technology. I started Virtualahan when I was 22 with no financial or social capital. I was rejected from jobs as a medical technician because of my diagnosis. And I always dreamed to become a medical doctor. But when I was denied from achieving it, it was very devastating. But that experience actually helped me understand the real impact of social exclusion in the workplace. Whether you are a person with disability, a recovering drug addict, an indigenous person, a solo parent, an out-of-school youth, or a person deprived of liberty, although we came from very diverse backgrounds, we share this common struggle of being socially excluded in the workplace because our labor system is not designed to provide accommodation to people from our background. And our education system does not prepare these talents for competitive employment. One of our graduates is Neil. He got into a motorcycle accident when he was 21, which caused him to be paralyzed from chest down. The way he functioned is very dependent on his parents, who are both senior citizens. He cannot even move his fingers, but he persevered and completed our training. And now, he's one of our best website designer and developer, providing his services to our clients all over the world. He is also now a Virtualahan coach for graphic design, providing the same opportunities to people like him. Neil taught me two things. First, that any one of us can become a person with disability at any time. Second, disability can also be a blessing if you have the right mind frame and support system. That's why life coaching through our well-being sessions and community building are equally important to the digital skills training that we provide at Virtualahan. We are building a safe community that helps restore human dignity and build emotional resilience to our graduates and their families. Now Virtualahan has graduated around 400 people from disadvantaged background, earning an average income that is 40 to 60% above the minimum wage in over 50 provinces all over the country. We have it in us, the power to create positive change, the ability to turn our impossibles around. And it's never easy, and it will require a lot of sacrifices. But I hope that my journey could serve as an example that everyone can be a change maker. I am Ryan Hersava, founder of Virtualahan, and I am an Ashoka Fellow.
Developing countries in Asia and the Pacific have come a long way in improving access to quality education, from having 2/3 of the world's out-of-school children in the 1970s to having 9 out of 10 children overall in the region enrolled in primary school by 2018.
Despite the good access to education, challenges still remain, especially with learning outcomes. Also, COVID has been a major game changer, and it has shown us the importance of remote learning and teaching. The Asian Development Bank has been providing financial and advisory assistance to its developing member countries to tackle the key education challenges.
For more than 50 years, and with over $15 billion in loans and grants to the education sector, the Asian Development Bank is committed to assisting our developing member countries to achieve the goal of quality education for all. Since 1966, Finland has been supporting ADB's efforts to achieve a prosperous, inclusive, resilient and sustainable Asia and the Pacific, and has advocated for education investments in the region along with other member countries.
ADB is looking forward to a continued partnership with Finland and to contributing together to the education sector in Asia and the Pacific. ADB's European Representative Office is preparing a country engagement plan with Finland to strategically map out where we can most closely and most effectively work together to maximize our combined efforts in achieving the goals of ADB Strategy 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals.
Education plays an important role in reducing poverty and in developing a nation. In the Philippines, access to quality education, especially among children, is a major challenge. The Asian Development Bank, in partnership with the government of Korea through the eAsia and Knowledge Partnership Fund, designed technical assistance to address basic education challenges in the Philippines by supporting Teach for the Philippines. It's a nonprofit organization that aims to provide all Filipino children with access to inclusive, relevant, and excellent education.
We started as a functional literacy organization that worked only in literacy. In 2012, we expanded to train teachers to work across the entire curriculum in basic education, and then we developed our work as technical assistants to the policy makers in government. So we've always been an organization that works on education quality over education access.
Teach for the Philippines enlists the country's young leaders to teach for 2 years in public schools as part of its leadership development program.
During the 2 years, we undergo several trainings, so related to teacher training, community engagement, and also leadership skills. We're also expected to design and implement a community project for our school.
What's different with TFP leadership program is that they also offer other facets of professional development. They also include leadership development. They also include community engagement. And that's a very holistic way of training our teachers here in the Philippines.
The most important thing that I learned from TFP's leadership development program is the importance of having personal connection and experience on the ground and on the field before being able to totally help the communities in need.
After 2 years of public school teaching, Teach for the Philippines alumni utilize their experience to eventually help transform the Philippine education landscape. Of the total alumni headcount, 32% joined the government, 26% went to teaching roles, and 15% assumed corporate positions.
Currently, I work with the social development sector.
And I'm now working as a project officer under the Research Center for Teacher Quality.
I decided to work on the government, providing transformations and reforms in the education system, since the government really provides good policies and programs that will really impact at the micro level in the classroom.
We go on to work both in the public and in the private sectors. I feel that a lot of the challenges in the education system are very complex challenges, and that requires different people from different fields with also a variety of expertise.
The Republic of Korea E-Asia and Knowledge Partnership Fund, which is administered by ADB, aims to promote improved access to information and the creation of sharing of knowledge in the Asia and Pacific region.
Without the support of the Asian Development Bank and the Korea E-Asia Fund, I wouldn't be sitting here today. They absolutely enabled our organization, Teach for the Philippines, to now work with and reach the 10,000 students we teach every year, 80,000 since we started, and the over 300 public school teachers that we've had the privilege and opportunity to work with. So we have nothing but gratitude to the Asian Development Bank and the people of Korea for their trust and support of our work in education quality in the Philippines. My name is Clarissa Isabel Delgado.
I'm Irish Joy de Ocampo.
I am Mikey Tuazon.
John Lawrence Garandang.
I am Jean Pineda.
And my team's vision is to enable public school teachers and public school students all over our country to achieve their potential.
The day can be trying, full of obstacles every step of the way. But there is a light that burns inside you, urging you to keep the faith, to not let the challenges define you, but to let them strengthen you. We believe in your narrative, your coming of age, the story that can only be written by you, and we want to walk that journey with you. To bring out your full potential, to facilitate pathways to different needs, aspirations, and goals, to ease the burdens that might slow you down, to turn possibilities into reality, and to be the bridge that enables you to go the distance. In your journey to success, always remember that you are not alone. For you are part of a larger community, made up of people who believe in you as much as we do. Together, we can realize our dreams and build a more inclusive society. So in the face of life's challenges, we remind you that you are braver than you think, stronger than you believe. Be fearless in your pursuit and know that we are right behind you. Your story has only just begun.
An inclusive culture is one that is not just about trying to integrate a group of people with disabilities, but rather it is a mindset that regardless of who you are or what you have, you would not feel different from others. And I'm very happy to say that Microsoft has leveled the playing field for me. My name is Raymond.
My name is Adrian.
And I have retinitis pigmentosa. Currently, I'm a final year student at NUS, majoring in data science.
I was approached by Microsoft to decide how I can support Siwei, who was a deaf intern.
At Microsoft, I was part of the PDM team or Partner Development Management team. I primarily deal with projects centered around partners.
Both of us are deaf, and we understand the common set of challenges that we face at work. So one of the areas that we face is how to communicate with your colleagues effectively. We identify a few options. What will be speech-to-text transcription? The other way is to teach colleagues a simple language.
SG Enable was very instrumental in helping me secure a role at Microsoft. My hiring manager, Pratima, who is also the chair for DNA Accessibility at Microsoft, has very graciously crafted projects for me. They are very tailored to my strengths.
Initially, it was quite challenging because I do not have any mentorship experience. So I feel that It helped me to be more open-minded and more innovative, and understand that everyone has their own different needs.
Microsoft fully subsidizes its employees to take up Microsoft certified certifications, and I've been making full use of these perks at Microsoft to upgrade myself and learn essential skills, such as equipping myself with certifications in Microsoft Azure and Power Platform's fundamentals. These skills have helped me to develop a deeper understanding of not just Microsoft product, but also cloud technology, automated reports, and apps in general. From working with partners, I've learned a lot about the different users of technology. Moving on from Microsoft, I intend to use the knowledge I've acquired from working at Microsoft to launch my own startup.
This is about creating the right experiences for everyone, including our potential partners and clients. By making them feel respected, it definitely helps to create sense of belonging and inclusiveness. Everyone is always saying that they should step out of the comfort zone. Take your opportunity to step out of your zone and make your place more accessible and inclusive now. Now it's never too late.
In the Philippines, people with disabilities and chronic diseases experience very high unemployment rate, primarily because of employment discrimination due to our outdated labor practice, keeping them in poverty. I personally experienced it in 2015 because of my incurable disease, which could have been prevented if I had access to vaccination as a child. And since nobody would hire me, I decided to hire myself and started Virtualahan instead. We built a fully accessible virtual school that equips our students with the digital skills and mindsets to work as online service providers. We also have our job matching platform, a life coaching program, and inclusive hiring services for our employer partners. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the demands for our solutions, and we are now running a national project with the government to extend our services to single mothers, out-of-school youth, as well as displaced workers because of the pandemic. We are also scaling Virtualahan via social franchising to enable other organizations to use our technology and the tested and proven impact formula to impact the lives of refugees, persons inside the jail, and other excluded communities. And this is how we are building the future of work that leaves no one behind. My name is Ryan, and I am Virtualahan. A warm welcome and thank you to everyone joining us today. We are delighted to have you with us in ADB's webinar series, Digital Technologies and Quality Jobs, Lessons Learned in New Horizons. In particular, we are delighted to bring this webinar to you in partnership between Asian Development Bank, Microsoft, and Virtualahan. My name is Ryan Hersava. I am the founder and president of Virtualahan, a social enterprise that is breaking down employment barriers for persons with disability using a pioneering impact formula and the equalizing power of technology. For our friends with low vision, or for those persons who are blind, I am mid 20s, wearing a black and teal polo shirt and using a Virtualahan background. With us as well is Jeff, our sign language interpreter. And as we start, kindly check the chat box for some tech reminders and kindly turn on live captioning if you need it and change your views to large gallery for better experience. We have tech support on standby if you need any assistance. Today's event is a 90-minute session. We will hear from 3 speakers, then open up for discussion, kicked off by a leading academic in this field. Colleagues from ADB will provide opening and closing remarks, and our 3 speakers will each give their presentations. Their bios are also attached on the pre-event email that you hopefully received. Our respondent will then start our panel discussion. As Now that we have allotted 30 minutes for Q&A, so get ready to ask your big questions as we are on Teams. The chat box is open and we welcome your questions written in the chat to the presenters as we go through. If we can cover as many as we like, though, the speakers have kindly agreed either to answer directly in the chat or to facilitate responses after the event. Okay, in today's webinar, we are focusing on expanding opportunities for quality jobs for persons with disabilities in Asia and the Pacific region. Our objective is for you to learn from the experiences of leading organizations in the region and building disability inclusive workplaces, improving the employability and employment of persons with disabilities. And also we will hear from representatives across private sector, civil society, as well as academia. We are very interested to understand what it takes to scale up efforts and build an ecosystem in the region. That means labor markets work in favor of and in collaboration with persons with disabilities. For example, at Virtualahan, we've identified that the systemic root causes of increasing unemployment of persons with disabilities are the accessibility gaps in the education system and other training programs and the outdated labor practice in the Philippines. So we created a virtual eskwelahan or a virtual school that equips people with disabilities with the mindset and skills to become competitive digital marketers. We are also helping them embrace their disability and become change makers in their own community. And in this process, breaking down transportation, infrastructure, technology, and cultural barriers while pioneering a framework for other organizations to replicate. I know you are looking forward to the presentations already. Importantly, we have ensured our event today is accessible for audience, for members of who themselves have disabilities. So we have international sign language interpreters, closed captioning, tech support, and the materials have been created with universal design in mind and audited to pass the W3 standards for accessible content as well. Now that we've done all these preliminaries, we will hear from Wendy Walker for her opening remarks. At Asian Development Bank, Wendy is chief of the Social Development Thematic Group, which leads on issues relating to poverty, equality, and inclusion, including quality jobs and disabilities. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Ryan, for that warm welcome for everybody today and for me as well.
So I want to thank everybody for joining as we discuss how to shape a better employment landscape for people with disabilities in Asia and Pacific. This is the second webinar in a new series here at ADB, focusing on digital technologies and quality jobs with the objective of highlighting lessons learned and new horizons. We're very delighted to be convening this event in partnership with Microsoft and Virtualahan, and to help us explore new ideas and discover innovative approaches in the challenges of increasing the inclusion of persons with disabilities in job markets across our regions, especially in the context of an increasingly digital future of work. The Asia and Pacific region is home to about 70% of the global population of people with disabilities, or around 690 million people. They often lack access to education, social protection, health and care services, employment, and livelihood opportunities, and face barriers in the built environment and in accessing information and assistive technologies. Poverty and disability are interrelated. Poor people are more likely to become disabled because of the conditions in which they live, and disability is more likely to make people poor because of discrimination and inequality in access to basic services and employment. The social and economic restrictions introduced to tackle COVID-19 pandemic over the last year and a half have increased the pre-existing barriers persons with disabilities face and created new risks and disruptions. Pre-COVID, we saw an inspiring and growing field of investment in enabling persons with disabilities to live fulfilled economic and social lives, new commitments to innovation and assistive technologies, and to building inclusive and diverse workforces and workplaces. The Microsoft APAC Enabler Program is a regional initiative that brings together a unique set of partnerships with employers, NGOs, and research institutions to help build skills and create employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. And we're very pleased that in our webinar today, we have speakers representing the role of private sector, civil society, a government agency, and academia to help us explore the role of different stakeholders in scaling up support to persons with disabilities in the labor market, including the important role of government in creating an enabling environment for business and others to invest. So I want to thank very much all of our speakers for joining us today. We have a very talented lineup, and I think it's going to be a very interesting set of presentations, and look forward to the discussion with everybody. We look forward to hearing about the experiences in developing a network of disability-inclusive employers in the digital economy, and how all partners can work together with and for persons with disabilities to fulfill their active social and economic presentation in communities across our region. With that very brief introduction, let me hand back to our moderator, Ryan, and thank again everybody for participating today. Over to you, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for helping us getting started today. Next, I am pleased to introduce our first presenter from Microsoft. Pratima Munkar is the Chair for Diversity and Inclusion and Accessibility at Microsoft in Asia Pacific.
Hello, everybody. There are no limits to what people can achieve when technology really reflects the diversity of everyone who uses it. Building accessibility into everything we do helps us empower people of all abilities to achieve more and really do what they love. We have an opportunity and a responsibility to create inclusive technology that works for everyone, for all of us. I'm Pratima Munkar. I lead Cloud and AI strategy for Microsoft APAC, and I'm additionally the accessibility lead in the area. In the next few minutes, I will share with you a little bit about our own journey in the space of accessibility, as well as maybe some insight on how we have actually become a company that keeps accessibility front and center in all that we do. And by sharing this, I hope to trigger thought and awareness and action on your part to help make our world a little more inclusive. Now, what is very interesting is the heart of all that we do, which is our mission. In Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person in every organization on the planet to achieve more. And really, folks, this is not just a set of words for us. It's our North Star. It's the basis of everything that we do, every product choice we make, the decisions that we make as a company and as individuals. And when we talk about empowering people, what we really mean is that with the right tools, with the right products, anyone can become and achieve anything that they want to. So we really seek to bridge the gap between opportunity and untapped potential through the power of technology and the power of the platform that it offers everyone. So this mission is, I know, very big, very bold, and it's very enduring. And this is really the cornerstone to everything that we do in this company, including our product decisions as well as our people decisions. In this journey as the cloud and AI person also, and different both business as well as when I work with accessibility, I meet a lot of customers, and many people really ask me, what exactly is accessibility? What does it mean? So just to share with you some thoughts around this, it can mean different things for different people. When some people think about accessibility, they think about designing buildings, they think about structures, and they think about the workplace itself in that fashion. Others think about it digitally, but really, to my mind, accessibility is nothing but enabling people to achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve. It's really about letting people fully participate and contribute to society around them. And it's really about creating experiences that are better for everyone. And what is really powerful, and all of us are very, very great, lucky to be in this space now, where we are now in this area and this age of AI, where AI can really add a layer to personalize and make every experience individual to a person's individual needs. So AI has the ability to change what is possible for people with disabilities. In the past, if you had to adapt to the world, in the future, the world will adapt to your individual needs and your preferences. And therefore, it's important to recognize the fact that for every one of us, accessibility is both a responsibility and an opportunity. And what does that really mean? And why is that? The simple fact is that there are about 1 billion people in the world who have disabilities. All of them need assistive technology, but only 1 in 10 have access to the products they need. And this means that many of them are not fully participative in our economies and our societies. And accessible technology can allow them to fully participate. Incidentally, 70% of the disabilities around us is invisible. So even if you meet somebody, you may not always know if there is a challenge, around them. And remember that, disability can also be temporary, situational, permanent. It's something that can, impact any of us anytime, and people that we care for at any point of time. Particularly now in this day and age, in COVID, we find that is a reality, because there are so many different needs that people have while participating in a normal economy from home. Accessibility is also an opportunity, by the way. We have learned that companies that embrace best practices for employing and supporting people with disabilities in the workplace outperform their peers. They attract and keep top talent, particularly because inclusion is a key attribute for millennials when they are actually, looking for jobs and when they choose to join a company. Incidentally, by 2025, millennials are going to be 75% of the global workforce. So we need to make sure that our own companies are reflective of the millennials' value, and disability and diversity and inclusion are top of the list for them. Another thing that we have come to the conclusion, and I'd like to bring to everybody on this call, is that inclusion is a driver for innovation. What does that mean exactly? Designing with and for people with disabilities leads to greater innovations for everyone. We all benefit. A real example is closed captioning. As we all know today, it's used everywhere, whether it is in noisy places like restaurants, or even for people who want to read, and follow the dialogue on television, which is in a different accent. So this is something so familiar to all of us that there is so much over here to learn about the fact that inclusion drives innovation. And this is repeatedly shown to us in different examples that you can see here. Our own journey at Microsoft is really fundamentally driven by the fact that Microsoft believes that disability is a strength. And over the years, we have worked to enable our products to help meet the needs of all our customers. And if I just lead you through a few of our examples on some of the highlights on our journey, that's what you see here in front of you. And what I'd really like to call your attention to is things like the Disability Answer Desk, which is available today, which in fact now during COVID has seen an exponential increase in people using it, and really meant and set up to be able to support people with disabilities. So there are so many examples here of the commitment that Microsoft has had around accessibility. And one of the biggest changes that we made in how we work is that we have made sure that accessibility is built in right from day one into the DNA of the company. So including our culture, our processes, our systems, everything is built around accessibility, only because then it can be a sustainable feature that will last well into the future. It's something that will be with us forever. And what I'd like to now therefore share with all of you is the fundamental change that you need to make is that you need to manage accessibility just like any other business. What does this mean? In 2016, we rebuilt our company-wide accessibility program and we made it a lot more systematic. It's really about the best practices that were there in the CMM model. I think many technical people on this team will be fairly familiar with the CMM model. And we then used the DAM model and we built something called the Microsoft Accessibility Evolution model. Essentially, what this model is that it's a method of being able to address business needs and actually look at it as a business driver, manage it like a business. So it has a set of structured levels with behaviors and practices and processes that can help to actually measure progress and have a sustained outcome. So it's not about it being a department or a diversity and inclusion initiative separately, but it's really a part of the core business. And becoming part of the core business is what you see in front of you here. This is a model. We have created a model comprised of 8 dimensions that you see here. We assess our own accessibility journey. And using these set of dimensions, we realize that, I realize that every company has its own pace and, you may have your own criteria, but these are examples of what you can do to be able to make a change and actually progress on your journey. So is it something like people and culture that you would like to incorporate, or would you like to embrace fresh view to sales and marketing and communications? Super critical to look at the right investments at the right time, early on. I would highlight the work that you need to do to train internally, right from bottom up, top down. Everybody needs training to actually look at the basis of accessibility. In Microsoft, accessibility training is a mandatory training that everybody goes through. So we need to look at all these different dimensions to be able to actually make an impact. And as we do this, I'd like to show you a few, tools that we have put in, and they are available for you. Tools like Accessibility Checker that is always run in the background. We have embraced these tools. This is easily discoverable in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, Visio, everything. It essentially gives you recommendations on how you could make your document more accessible and look at how you could create accessible content. Another interesting tool, which I think all of you would be interested in, is PowerPoint, where we are looking at live captions, and as you speak, live captions will come on any of your PowerPoint presentations. In fact, it has got multiple supported languages, and it can subtitle into so many supported written languages. So this is a feature that is there, and the reason why I'm bringing all this up to you is to tell you that there are tools available today at your fingertips in all our Microsoft products, so that you can actually avail of assistive technology, irrespective of whether you need it or not. In fact, I use, Accessibility Checker, of course, and PowerPoint, but I also use things like changing the mouse pointer and, making ease of access settings, etc. So would encourage everybody to definitely look at that. And now for the next 2-3 minutes, let me now share with you some details on the APAC Microsoft Enabler program, which we launched last year, late last year. And the reason why I want to share it with you is because it's an exciting program and would love to see more people actually embrace it. It's a platform, it's a consortium. And under this program, we basically seek to increase the employability of people with disabilities, and we want to improve inclusion. So as recently as this afternoon, we have been talking to another group of people who wanted to create a program exactly like this. So I think this is a good thing, and I would love for everybody here to hear more about this. It's really about a consortium approach, as I said. We have tied up with nonprofit organizations who help with the employer prep and the workshops, assessing the talent available and matching the right talent to the right opportunity. And these opportunities are available with our commercial partners. Our participating partners provide the opportunities for job shadowing, mentorships, internships, and employment. So essentially all these are different experiences, job-related experiences, which will help increase the employability. So we've had some real successes where people who have been mentored have been then absorbed into companies or moved ahead to some internships. And even vice versa, like people who went through internships, then went through mentoring, as well as CV clinics, etc., to help prepare for jobs in technical fields, or also for jobs where tech is an enabler. So for example, recently we have worked with somebody who wanted to join an HR function, and tech is an enabler, and also then learned how to use data and insights to be able to actually do the job better. And tools like Power BI, etc., are so easy to learn, and it's available. And that brings me, therefore, to our part in this. Microsoft provides Accessibility 101 training for the companies, for the participating partners. And we also handhold our partners on accessibility and inclusive design, and helping them actually evolve their culture around accessibility. And in addition to this, we provide online technical training and certification paths for people with disabilities. So excited because we've had so many of our partners actually actively engaging with us to bring career enhancing opportunities to people with disabilities, and working closely with our nonprofits to develop develop this entire muscle and develop their own awareness and as well as contribute to this motion. And I'd like to now show you and just, a few of the training paths that we have under this program. We provide free online accessible training on many technical and non-technical topics. Do go on to LinkedIn Learning and Microsoft Learn, as well as GitHub. And there are ranging from entry-level digital literacy programs to advanced skills for technical roles. What we also try to do is curate this based on what are the in-demand roles in this area in APAC, and try to make sure that these curated roles are highlighted to you so that you know where you could possibly place your bets on and start learning and becoming more ready for future jobs. Also notice that there will be, many trainings that you will need on things like how do you become a better collaborator, for example. Today, with the need for collaborative tools, there is a need for you to learn collaboration tools like Teams and so on. So there are training programs for that, and it's available. So it's a library of high quality learning paths. For people to prepare themselves for in-demand roles like digital marketing or project manager or data analyst or software developer, etc. And this is really not us thinking on our own, but also us thinking along with LinkedIn. As you know, you can be sure that insight from LinkedIn will help and help along the path. And added to that, you have GitHub Learning Lab. And what's exciting about GitHub Learning Lab is that it gives hands-on learning experiences so that people can do projects and do small things that they can learn on fun but realistic projects. So again, a preparation that can happen is what is available now, and we support that. And before I go forward, I have to also point out that what we're trying to do with the training paths is that we also support it with technical consult sessions. So twice a month we run these community sessions where people can log in and ask questions and meet with an expert on different topics ranging from Azure to modern workplace to Power BI to Power Apps, and basically clarify any doubts or anything that they want to. And our dream was also to build a community of people who will, who will be able to share and take this forward. So we have an opportunity really with all of these tools and all of these products and our awareness and so many people at the wheel. All of us have an opportunity to explore how to create the next generation of accessible technology, how to really drive that innovation that comes with it. And I would like to humbly invite everybody here to join us on this journey to improve inclusion of people with disabilities worldwide for years to come. Thank you so much, everybody.
This is a very insightful presentation, Pratima, and I'm always in love with Microsoft's powerful mission. The highlight for me is the tracking of accessibility progress and emphasizing that it is a journey and that we should trust the process. Now, we will hear from Winnie Lewis, the head of disability inclusion at SG Enable, who will explain about their role in Microsoft's APAC Enabler program that Pratima mentioned.
Good day, I'm Winnie, Head of Disability Inclusion at SG Enable. Our sincere thanks to today's hosts, the Asian Development Bank, Microsoft and Virtualahan, for inviting us to join the session to share perspectives on the Microsoft APAC Enabler program. The Enabler program sees Microsoft's partners commit to providing opportunities for persons with disabilities in collaboration with non-profit organizations to connect with candidates with the profile, skills, and qualification requirements of the role. At SG Enable, we believe that persons with disabilities are integral members of society and that employment empowers persons with disabilities to lead fulfilling lives. We are pleased to partner Microsoft in this meaningful initiative and will share how we support the employer partners in building capabilities to work with persons with disabilities, enabling workplace disability inclusion, and building a more inclusive workforce for the future. Next slide. We'll start with an introduction to SG Enable and our work in enabling persons with disabilities, including some case examples, before sharing how we help organizations improve their workplace disability inclusion practices by enabling and recognizing employers. Next slide. First, an introduction to SG Enable. Next slide. SG Enable is an agency dedicated to enabling persons with disabilities, working towards our vision of an inclusive society and enabled lives. We are the first stop touchpoint dedicated to serving persons with disabilities, and we also work together with other agencies, service providers, and partners to support persons with disabilities to achieve their fullest potential. One key area in this work is in enhancing the employment and employability options for persons with disabilities. We do this by taking an ecosystem approach towards achieving ready persons with disabilities, ready employers, and nurturing a ready environment. We provide training and employment support for persons with disabilities who are work capable. We also encourage employers to be inclusive with consultancy, funding support, and recognition. Supported by disability employment professionals and partners, this comprehensive approach fosters an environment where persons with disabilities can access the dignity of work and thrive at the workplace. Next slide. Let me share how this works with a case example. One of the ways we support tertiary students with disabilities in their transition to work is by partnering local institutes of higher learning, IHLs for short, to match students with disabilities to internship opportunities from inclusive organizations. Zhiwei was an undergraduate specializing in information and communication technology, participating in SG Enable's IHL internship program in 2019. We had been engaging Microsoft as an employer, and Zhiwei was matched to an opportunity at Microsoft in partner development management, along with acquiring Microsoft certificates in Azure. As part of the support available to employers, a sharing session was also conducted for the internship supervisors at Microsoft for improved disability confidence. Zhiwei contributed in other ways too. He is deaf and conducted a lunch and learn session at Microsoft during his internship, teaching the staff sign language, sharing his personal story to raise awareness for the deaf community in Singapore, and showcasing an app that he developed, Voice Ears, a communication tool for persons who are unable to hear or speak with the world around them, controlling and timing the words that they wanted to speak by pointing to the screen. Zhiwei was able to take questions from the audience who typed them into Teams by replying through Voice Ears. He also supported Microsoft's participation at the SG Enable Training and Career Fair in 2019 and had the opportunity to demonstrate the app to President Halimah Yacob, who praised the event. Next slide. Participation in the Enabler program was a growth of our partnership with Microsoft to further empower companies in Singapore with the necessary knowledge and skills to hire persons with disabilities to build a more inclusive workforce for the future, particularly in the technology sector. Here, we are heartened to see successes as well. Raymond specialized in data science and analytics as an undergraduate and was matched by SG Enable to an internship at Microsoft as Partner Development Manager in 2020. During his internship, he constructed a dashboard using Power BI to recommend top-performing partners in the APAC region. The strategic planning tool he developed helped to achieve greater revenue in Azure consumption. At the launch of the Enabler program, he shared that his time at Microsoft allowed him to learn how to drive an initiative in a giant corporation, navigating through different teams to come up with a centralized objective that drives all parties' performance indexes. An aspiring UX designer with skills in programming and digital illustration, Marcus was completing a diploma in information technology and matched by SG Enable for software developer internship role with NTT Data Singapore, an employer partner on the Enabler program. During his internship, he successfully completed development of an internal application. Following his internship, NTT Data Singapore has grown in disability confidence and is now conducting talks to students with disabilities and their wider cohorts in local polytechnics to raise awareness around diversity and inclusion. Next slide. Next, we'd like to share how we help organizations improve their workplace disability inclusion practices by enabling and recognizing employers. We work closely. Sorry, next slide. Next slide, please. We work closely with employers, as we have on the Microsoft Enabler program, to enable their businesses for disability inclusive hiring, helping them to acquire the necessary knowledge and skills, advisory, and resources to be empowered to begin this journey. This support is progressive, what we call the Equip, Engage, Employ framework for organizations to get ready, get involved, and get going on workplace disability inclusion. At the Equip stage, employers can start with toolkits and workshops to give participants a basic understanding of the different disability profiles and how to interact with persons with disabilities before moving on to more advanced topics that are on the SG Enable High Impact Retention and Employment Workshop series. This provides a comprehensive and structured training framework and covers specific topics such as workplace accessibility and the use of assistive technology. To build experience and confidence, employers can engage with persons with disabilities from the Institutes of Higher Learning and special education schools through our transition to work platforms. The Employ stage offers a range of practical support for employers. For example, there is the government-funded Open Door program administered by SG Enable, which funds employee training, workplace modifications, job redesign, and the purchase of assistive technology devices to support persons with disabilities at work. To complement these, there is also advisory and consultancy services that sees SG Enable's consultants coming alongside to support employers in their unique journeys in workplace disability inclusion. Employers share that this has been helpful in retaining their employees with disabilities. Next slide. We want to enable every organization for success in their workplace disability inclusion journeys. And here, we share 5 key areas where we encourage employer partners to weave in as they consider their implementation plans. First, embrace and commit to disability inclusion as an organization. You can work with the leadership team to set the tone for the organization's commitment to disability inclusion, communicating to employees and equipping them through training. Second, look towards implementing recruitment strategies that are inclusive, leveraging pre-employment programs, and relooking the recruitment outreach channels and job design. Third, making the workplace accessible by eliminating barriers in the physical and virtual space and practicing flexibility in providing work accommodations. Fourth, for employers to consider reviewing their current employment practices and ensuring that they are fair and progressive, including for persons with disabilities, from the range of onboarding to compensation and benefits through to performance management. Last but not least, for employers to consider engaging their communities in disability inclusion, encouraging other organizations to begin their journeys looking into consumer inclusiveness as well as procurement policies and practices. And again, thank you to Microsoft for successfully doing this. So you see, organizations can play their part in a number of ways, both inside and outside of their physical four walls. These key areas are also key categories for assessment when organizations apply for the Enabling Mark accreditation. Next slide. The Enabling Mark is a national level accreditation framework in Singapore that benchmarks and recognizes organizations for their best practices and outcomes in disability inclusive employment. We are at this point looking forward to the inaugural Enabling Mark Awards that will be taking place at the end of August. Besides organizations assessed to qualify for the Enabling Mark, we will also be featuring other Enabling Mark Awards that recognize projects, ideas, or innovations to improve the employment and employability or productivity of persons with disabilities. Management staff and co-workers who are committed to supporting the disability inclusive employment journey, as well as exemplary employees with disabilities. We welcome employers in Singapore keen to measure their efforts in workplace disability inclusion and be accredited to apply for the Enabling Mark. Applications are open all year round, so if organizations are already hiring persons with disabilities and wish to be accredited, do get in touch. I hope this sharing gave some insights on how we have supported employers on the Enabler program, but also to employers in the audience, some ideas to get started on. We hope that whatever your role is in the organization, that you come away with something, a new idea, a fresh perspective, a new strategy that you can apply to catalyze workplace disability inclusion in your organizations. Together, we can make a difference. Join us as we work towards an inclusive society and enabled lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Winnie. I saw a lot of wows in the chat box when you started sharing Raymond's story. And speaking of chat box, feel free to share your questions and insights in the chat to our attendees as well. For our final presentation, before our exciting Q&A, Pratibha Kurnul, APAC Lead and Strategic Partnerships Lead for Social Impact, Outreach, and Cognizant will share her insights.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be speaking at this very important joint webinar with ADB, Microsoft and Virtualahan, discussing disabilities and labor market inclusion in Asia and the Pacific. So let me share a little bit about myself. My name is Pratibha Kurnul, and I work for Cognizant. So Cognizant is one of the world's leading professional services companies. So I am based in Singapore, and I lead Cognizant's social responsibility program called Outreach for the Asia Pacific region. And in my other role, I also work with our strategic technology partners like Microsoft to enable social impact. Next slide. So let me share a little more about Cognizant. We are headquartered in the US, and we have a really large global presence with more than 290,000 employees globally and more than 100 development and delivery centers across the globe. But really, what excites me the most about the organization is our very deep sense of purpose. And I would like to introduce the organization through our purpose statement, which is to engineer modern businesses to improve everyday life. And we do this through our 4 core digital offerings in IoT or Internet of Things, AI, artificial intelligence, digital engineering, and cloud. But the purpose makes it very, very clear that everything we do is really centered by the why. Why do we exist? Which is to improve everyday life. Next slide. Our social responsibility strategy really stems from this purpose statement, and we aim to improve everyday life in 2 ways: supporting inclusion in tech and increasing community impact. And for the purpose of our discussion today, I especially want to highlight supporting inclusion in tech, where we are supporting education and skilling of students and adults, and want to see more participation in the tech workforce from underrepresented groups. And underrepresented groups includes women as well as persons with disabilities. And before we proceed further, I just want to take a pause here and make a point. Are organizations supporting inclusion in tech purely from a philanthropic angle? Just take a second to kind of process that question. The answer is a resounding no. Why? Well, we're all very aware of the power of diverse teams and the benefits which include, there's increase in innovation, creativity. There's even some talk of reduce peer pressure and insecurities in the overall team. And end of the day, it's really great for the organization. There is enough research and evidence to support this. So there is a real opportunity here to impact business directly and positively with a more diverse workforce. And the opportunity for persons with disabilities is especially higher in the technology sector because of two main reasons. This is my experience. One, and this is a very obvious one, it's that the maximum number of jobs today and in the foreseeable future are coming and are going to come from the tech sector. In fact, when it comes to tech jobs, there's really a war for talent out there, and organizations need newer channels to spot and hire talent. And this is great news because of, reason number two, which is that the roles in a technology company involve the use of technologies and accessible technologies. And thanks to industry leading organizations like Microsoft here, accessible tech is slowly becoming the standard and it's being increasingly used and deployed. Next slide. Okay. However, despite the obvious benefits, there are challenges and they're not really unique to any specific organization. So what is really required in initiating and sustaining a culture of inclusion. So when you look at it, where is this? So there is this opportunity, but there are these challenges as well. So where is this resistance actually stemming from? And I would just say three main areas. One is lack of awareness, knowledge, and a deeper understanding. Hiring managers are a little unsure how they're going to communicate, collaborate, and put it very simply, how do they get the work done? Co-workers are a little hesitant because they don't really know how much they're going to be asked to accommodate. HR and talent acquisition teams can be a little unsure because they're not sure about what the hiring managers and the larger teams are thinking. They're not sure what are the additional expectations that could be on them, and quite simply they do not have the tools and the frameworks for disability management or even a deeper understanding of what kind of accommodation needs are expected from them. So when you really look at the issue, the path to inclusion becomes a lot more clear. I can click. One, awareness. Improving awareness about the opportunity and the cost. Two, training. Equipping all stakeholders with the knowledge and the tools required to leverage the benefits of inclusion. And finally, the third one, which is involvement. A deeper, more empathy-driven understanding can happen only when there is real-life engagement. So that's exactly what we did, and this is my favorite story. The MS Enabler program gave us the opportunities to really understand issue better, the tools, the resources, and most importantly, the partnerships to get us started. But we don't necessarily have to do this in chronological order. What we did was we really used a differentiated approach. So the awareness campaigns were targeted at the larger group of employees, while the deeper involvement was from senior leaders who are also hiring managers who influence key decisions. The training was for our employees, we call them associates, to understand more about accessible technology and get trained actually in Microsoft accessibility fundamentals. So Here in Singapore, we teamed up with SG Enable to mentor youth for tech jobs, and this was a 16-week one-to-one mentoring program. But the catch was the mentors were senior leaders from business, and through the 16 weeks, they developed a much deeper understanding of the youth. And they came back to us recommending a hire. Similarly, in the Philippines, we were partnered with Virtualahan, and our head of HR was involved, which led to one of the mentees being recruited as a data analyst, in Cognizant. Involvement of senior leaders was also done in other ways. For instance, we approached our digital business and artificial intelligence team to get involved in the AI for Accessibility Hackathon. There were two teams really who worked so diligently in putting the solutions together. And in this process, researched various topics related to disability and accessibility. I cannot stress enough the importance of including and involving hiring managers and senior leaders and creating positive experiences for them. So when we do this right, we are creating influential cheerleaders within the organization who will amplify the message and really leverage the opportunity. And yes, of course, the other components of the ecosystem have to work too. And we address this through two major global campaigns to promote accessibility training for our associates. During our Global Impact Month in November 2020 and during the GAD, or the Global Accessibility Awareness Day, we had events where Microsoft workplace experts spoke to more than 1,700 employees from Cognizant across 30 countries and introduced them to accessibility concepts. We had some very interesting experiences while conducting these events. One of our own employees, who's an accessibility design expert at Cognizant and is also a person with visual impairment, hosted the event. And all this, right, really helped us push the needle forward and really make our case. The final two clicks. So far, through the MS Enabler program, we've engaged more than 2,500 associates and connected with more than 650 persons with disabilities. Next slide. And with that, I'm super happy to share of a very recent development. Cognizant has joined the Valuable 500, a global movement that is putting disability on the business leadership agenda. So the Valuable 500 is a catalyst for large private sector corporations to be, to be at the tipping point for change and really unlock the social and economic value of people living with disabilities across the world. Next slide. So with that happy announcement, our inclusion journey continues to move forward. And, just like it takes a village to raise a child, our entire ecosystem is important for us to further the economic and social social opportunity. We need partners like Microsoft and ADB who are championing disability inclusion and providing the platform and the opportunities to effect change. We need partners like SG Enable and Virtualahan who will always provide us with the community view and be our trusted advisors and knowledge partners, equipping organizations like ourselves with the best practices, with the training tools and resources to guide us through this really, truly enabling journey. Next slide. So thank you everyone for your time today and the opportunity to share about our journey towards inclusion. Thank you so much. And if you need to connect with me, my mail ID is there is there on the slide. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prativa. We have some Virtualahan graduates in the audience right now who can testify about Cognizant's commitment towards more inclusive workplaces, especially here in the Philippines. Thank you as well to all our speakers. We need more thought leaders like you. We have several group chats of like different disability community that are joining here this afternoon, and like people were like, okay, so we are taking accessibility to the next level. And yes, disability leaders, we are definitely taking accessibility to the next level. Before we proceed to our Q&A, I think we all deserve a very quick breather right now. So if you can all turn on your camera, we're just gonna take a quick picture for everybody before we transition to the Q&A. Is that all right? So if you are comfortable, may I invite you to please turn on your camera, and we're gonna just take a really quick photo. Yes, I know there's like information overload right now, so we'll use this time to just have a quick breather before we fully transition to our exciting Q&A. Okay, so may I invite more people? I'll give you 10 more seconds, and we will have a large gallery and a together mode version of these photos. And soon as I get a signal from our tech support, I will do a countdown. Okay, let's do a quick countdown. 1, 2, 3, smile. And let's take one more. 3, 2, 1, smile. Awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you as well to our tech supporters making all of these things happen. With all this in mind, we will now start our panel discussion. To our 93 plus attendees and still counting, it's now time to ask your big questions via the chat. We will have a chance to hear again from each of our speakers, and we turn our attention to how we can work together to scale up efforts and build a regional ecosystem that serves our communities with disabilities and prioritizes their interests and aspirations. An important part of this ecosystem is, evidence-based. Yes, and we are pleased to have as our respondent, Dr. Maria Cat, who will kick off our questions. Maria, we are keen to hear your reflections on the insights shared by our speakers today to set up our questions to the panel. So over to you.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you everybody for those excellent presentations. I think they were really informative and really clear that one of the key successes is the range of partnerships across public, private sector, civil society. So I think that's really important. I have 5 points I think that have struck me as we've been listening to the presentations. The first is the need to really ensure we bridge the employment and education gap. I think we've seen some excellent examples here in the presentations, but I think across the region, we know that children and adults with disabilities often fare less well in the education system because of the lack of access to education. But we also know that sometimes the subjects being taught in school don't match the employment needs. And I think we need to do better about matching the skills needed with the curriculums in schools. Technology, as we've heard, can be a means to achieving this, both in the terms of accessibility, and work we're doing in the Global Disability Innovation Hub for the 80-20-30 programme is really highlighting about what works for assistive technology. And also education technology. We hear a lot about EdTech and how that can support children's education. But we also need to think about the skill sets children are learning at school. And I think we know that technical vocational education training, or TVET, can also be a means to bridge that gap. But I think there are opportunities to do better within the education system. My second point, and I think, Ryan, you touched upon this in your very nice presentation at the beginning, is to really ensure that there is continued engagement of persons with disabilities themselves in these discussions. And we really need to make sure that what we working towards is that what people with disabilities want, and that they are included in those discussions, particularly those who are marginalised. And I include women in that. We see a huge employment gap still in many of the APAC region countries for women compared to their male counterparts. But also refugees, displaced children, those living in informal settlements, those with different impairment groups that are particularly excluded, such as deafblind or learning difficulties. So I really want to highlight the need to ensure full inclusion. My third point picks up on something that Wendy mentioned in the beginning about the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. We know that it's been huge challenges across the education and employment sectors, but there are also opportunities. Many of us have learnt to work from home, and that can be hugely beneficial, as we've seen in the videos, for people who might have difficulties with transport, etc. But we need to ensure those opportunities are capitalised on and that there's data there to monitor progress towards full inclusion and ensure that people with disabilities are not left behind as we do these catching up programmes. And I'll come back to one way we might do that at the end. I was also struck in the presentations about so many opportunities here for South-South learning. I think there are some really good examples. Some of them we could really do some excellent research around. I'm an academic, of course I'm going to say that. But I think it's really important to try and do more South-South learning and facilitate that. And I wonder if the Asian Development Bank might have a role as a knowledge broker here. And finally, I want to really highlight the role of governments in scaling up programmes. And I think the Enabler programme is an excellent example of that. We know there's growing evidence that we need a range of partnerships. As we often say in the disability world, there is no magic bullet for this. There's no magic bullet, one solution to get people into employment or education. So what can governments do? We know that many are already committed to their obligations under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, such as anti-discrimination legislation. But oftentimes they need to do more, for explaining about what they might mean by reasonable accommodation. The convention talks about reasonable accommodation, but it's often not elaborated on about what people are entitled to under that reasonable accommodation or adjustments. We also know there are things like employment quotas, supported employment, job coaching, contracting, as well as social protection. All of these things we know work, but not one of them works alone. We need them in combination. So one opportunity I think that's increasingly is to use data. Obviously, I'm an academic, we rely on data, but I think we also use data to really highlight those gaps. And we know that the recently quite new innovations such as the Washington Group questions, which are now being used in the International Labour Organization Labour Force Survey, the disability module, really highlights the opportunity to collect population-based data, and the module in its acronym is the Washington Group ILO LFSDM, can be used in labour force surveys or population-based surveys to collect data, and it collects 5 different aspects, both disability identification, the barriers to employment, accommodations necessarily and available, attitudes and social protection. And I think this is a really important piece of information for governments to start using this in their population surveys, in their labour force surveys, to really collect that data, not just about are you employed, yes, no, but the more nuanced details about that. And I think that is a really important point to make. So I have 3 questions, one for each of the panelists. I'll ask one each now, and I'll hand over to Pratima to start. So my question for Pratima, what do you think the key lessons from the pilot phase of the Enabler programme are, and what direction do you plan to take it in the future? Pratima, I think your presentation leads me to ask, what do you think the key gaps are in the private sector, and who really needs to do what to get more businesses on board with inclusive employment? And finally, my question to you, Winnie. I think you really highlighted the role of different range of stakeholders in the disability inclusive employment ecosystem, particularly around the provision of resources. So I have 2 questions for you. When you're placing interns, how do you really ensure that the most marginalised are reached and heard? And secondly, perhaps you could talk a little bit more about those assessments for the resource needs. I think we might learn something for that. So thank you again, and I hand over to you now, Pratima, to answer my question. Thank you.
Okay, hi Maria. Testing that you can hear me well. You can, right? Yeah. Thank you. Firstly, I'm absolutely excited. I heard all the other speakers, and it's very energizing to be part of this discussion at all. So thank you very much for having us here. Yes, the Enabler program was a pilot, and it is a learning opportunity for us. And I do agree that it has been a growth opportunity, not just for ourselves, but also for all the partners who were part of us. It was new for everybody, including SG Enable and Virtualahan, something, of this kind of a concept. So I think the top 3 learnings is fairly reflective of what Pratibha talked about also from Cognizant. One is that there is a body of work that needs to be done for all of us to improve awareness internally inside the ecosystem for the entire company. And this is critical. This is the root. This is the fundamental that we will need to tackle in the very near term to make sure that everybody is aware of their role and what they can do in this entire journey of accessibility. So the work that Cognizant did was amazing. I love those examples. Similar kind of activities need to be done across the board. We do have some of our other partners who have also done similar things. For example, I'd like to call out Entity as well as HCL Tech, etc., who have done similar things. Cognizant has taken it to, with Pratibha's passion, has taken it really very deep. So essentially doing basic amount of training, but also working closely with organizations such as SG Enable and Virtualahan to look at inclusive hiring workshops. So these things are super critical. In addition to that, I'd like to bring to the table something that we learned and which touches upon what you just talked about, Dr. Maria, and what everybody else has also been talking about. The reality today is that the unprecedented pace of innovation is really reshaping the needs for the workforce. There are more, there's a demand for newer skills. And it's in that environment within which people with disabilities are also competing for jobs, for the next job, and for employment opportunities. And at the forefront of this is the fact that there is going to be a skills shortage, and over 70% of the jobs by 2024 will require degree of technical skills. Communication skills are in high demand and are scarce across sectors. And, the reality is with the digital transformation that is taking place today with COVID, more than 800 million people will need to learn new skills by 2030. So this is really, a very strong learning that I got in the Enabler program, that this need of digital skills and at least very basic digital literacy is going to be the skill needed in the future. You talked about data. I just want to share with all of you here that just 4 months ago, we did a survey and IDC asked business leaders what skills they believed will be important as people move into recovery. Economies are moving into recovery today. And it's clear that, we cannot predict too far into the future. But skills in APAC, if you just look at LinkedIn and look at the skills data that is coming up from there, in-demand jobs are going to be things like, of course, software developer and so on. But I have seen examples of people with disabilities really shining in IT support jobs. Software development, yes, it is there. We have seen that. In addition to that, I would bring to notice something like an IT support job, data analytics, financial analytics, digital marketing, graphical design. We've seen these 4 or 5, good job opportunities where I would urge all of us, everybody here, to seriously think about how we could lend our power and our muscle around developing future-ready, employable skills. And of course, the fact that today with the need for collaboration tools, we got to help people learn that. So I would say that more important than anything else, let's bring this whole learning, skilling piece, and all of us, whether governments or whether individual agencies, seriously look at how we could develop that further. So I'll stop here. I know I've talked a lot, but happy to take questions. And as in a summary, I would say that the 2 big learnings that we had is awareness, of which mentorship, etc., is important, and skilling and the need for a different view to that is critical. Over back to you, Maria.
Thank you. That's really helpful and really, I think, highlighted what the points we were really trying to make about the skill set needed going forward. So thank you for that. Pratibha, I'll hand over to you now. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Maria. And thank you, Pratima, for sharing and also for your kind words. And I really, I really want to thank Microsoft, ADB, Virtualahan, and SG Enable for furthering dialogue on this really very important topic. A focus area for Cognizant Outreach has been supporting inclusion in tech, and this is really a great platform to be driving more conversations around this. To your question, Maria, I think when it comes to the private sector, I believe the private sector is really very well intentioned, but needs more awareness and understanding. And currently, right, the private sector tends to bucket action around disability typically under philanthropy, whereas what we really need to be looking at is looking at disability as a business case. So the question therefore becomes, how can we really shape a better employment landscape for persons with disabilities? And I believe the biggest challenge to this is awareness. So awareness not in the typical sense that we understand about the issue itself, but awareness around best practices from the most inclusive organizations. What are they doing? Awareness on accessible technologies. And most important of all, understanding and appreciating why it makes a business, why there is a business case to hire more persons with disabilities. And earlier in the presentation, Pratima talked about innovations, driven by and for persons with disabilities, which is so true. So like I think we did with gender diversity, where we've had significant success as a community, I think now it's time to really address disability inclusion, which impacts at scale. So I think, in terms of, how the private sector can be supported, I would think especially nonprofits. I think nonprofits can feed the private sector with opportunities which to engage, which really helps to create an inclusive culture. And real culture, I think, is the most sustainable way to change and manage and maintain change. So which means creating safe spaces where businesses can share their challenges and also seek support for addressing them. For instance, speaking for Cognizant, SG Enable has a great program which has trained our hiring managers on disability management in the workspace. Similarly, I know Virtualahan also has programs like that, and we've engaged with them in the Philippines. Virtualahan and SG Enable, as well as Tomo Work, actually, they've provided us with opportunities to mentor and volunteer and engage, and that really helps organizations like ours to be involved and included. And I would give a big shout out to volunteer programs because they have the potential to drive inclusion in a very organic manner and also drive it at scale. Especially circling back to some of the points that Maria was making earlier about education and skilling, there is a very sustainable way that we can engage and enable education and skilling through volunteering and mentorship programs. And the other area, I think this is something that Pratima was just talking about, is how can nonprofits ensure that your members are really equipped with the digital skills. So we know that technology is going to be the biggest leveler, and also has the potential to really impact at scale, again, to repeat that point. So I think the focus on improving tech skills, I think that's going to go a long way. Most of the jobs coming up in are going to be either tech enabled jobs or tech jobs themselves. So I think a focus on that from the private sector would be great. From the nonprofits. For the governments, I would be really in favor of the nudge theory, like they say, as against a quota system or other such. Because in my opinion, providing incentives, whether it's improving, also improving accessible infrastructure, actively fostering tripartite partnerships, And finally, shining the light on organizations which really have an inclusive culture. So whether that's recognizing, rewarding, amplifying work of organizations who are driving this culture, I think all that goes a long way in helping to support the private sector take that take the small steps as well as the big leap that's required. So I would say yes, we definitely need more collaborations and partnerships, and onwards to more innovation and inclusion in tech. Thank you.
Pratibha, thank you. That's really helpful. And you raise a lot of points about awareness. And I'm just going to take the opportunity to do a big shout out. Next week, on the 19th of August, the We the 15 campaign is being launched, which will include a lot of the stakeholders present here. And it coincides with the launch of the Paralympics. So I'll put a link to that in the chat. And please do look out for that, because I think it's a global campaign to really raise awareness about disability issues, stigma, exclusion. And it's really trying to shift people's perceptions on a global scale, and I think it's going to be really exciting and will hopefully be a game changer. Final question, Winnie. Sorry, I'm using your space. Over to you, Winnie.
Thank you very much, Maria. I heard the question. I understand that you're asking a little bit more about interns and internships. I'd just like to expand that a little bit. I cannot overemphasize, and I think that's also brought up in Pratima and by Pratibha as well in terms from their sharing. So I can't overemphasize the importance of nurturing the ecosystem to encourage an ideal mix of efforts and leveraging partnerships to scale these efforts so that we can maximize success and sustainability in the participation of persons with disabilities, and balancing that with opportunities that employers make available and accessible. And of course, supporting this is with the support of disability employment professionals. So I'm going to touch on all three groups. That has guided our approach in employment and employability, and that support has, for us, evolved and strengthened over the years. So jumping into scaling efforts and enabling persons with disabilities, we work closely with many key stakeholders, such as the social service agencies, employers, training partners, and many more. And as the key focal agency in the disability space in Singapore, we do this to galvanize the sector to fulfill our mission. We do this because by tapping on the expertise of our stakeholders, we are able to unlock and create more meaningful employment outcomes. So in the space of, say, the transition to work, we partner educational institutions such as special education schools and institutes of higher learnings, as well as hospitals, on a range of transition to work programs that avails training pathways and work options for persons with disabilities with the potential to work. So examples were shared in the presentation earlier. Chiwei, Raymond, and Marcus, mentioned earlier, were participants on our IHL internship program for students with disabilities from the tertiary institutes, securing opportunities with Microsoft and partners on the Enabler program. These broker opportunities for interns to build professional networks that go beyond the internship period to gain job-related knowledge and skills. And I'm happy to say and add on to Chiwei that he has recently graduated and already secured an employment opportunity with a government agency in technology field. So adding on not just the internship programs, we also run a mentorship program for the IHL students. So this matches tertiary students with business leaders for professional guidance, tapping on the mentor's expertise, experience, and networks. Just on the Enabler program alone, we have seen more than 20 mentors from Microsoft and the Enabler program partners, including Cognizant, very strong support there, with many of these mentors sharing that they also benefited from the experience and gained insights on persons with disabilities as a viable and valuable talent source. So not to forget, beyond transition to work, the catchment of our transition, persons with disabilities transiting to the workspace, we also partner key social service agencies, each with specialist capabilities to provide job support to persons with disabilities. So they don't just provide employment facilitation services, but they also include things like includes recommendation on the training, as well as accessibility, accommodations, and other assistive support for persons with disabilities. In the space of training, we curate and partner specialized and mainstream training providers to offer skills training programs for persons with disabilities to support the job search and career development efforts. And a very important piece in this is, of course, the employers. We partner with trade associations and chambers of commerce, employers, networks, and key employers who play the role of multipliers to amplify our reach and strengthen our impact. And a case in point and a great example is the Microsoft Enabler program to catalyze disability inclusive hiring in the tech sector. So employers who are committed to moving the needle forward can tap on our advisory and consultancy support, which sees our employer consultants coming alongside employers, as we have on the Enabler program, identifying their needs and equipping employers with the resources for capability building and engaging with persons with disabilities. We also administer government-funded initiatives that encourages employers to hire, train, and integrate persons with disabilities. So one example is the Open Door program, and we're just going to point to one key resource on the Open Door program, which is the Job Redesign Grant. And this is a support to employers to help defray the costs of job redesign, such as equipment purchase and workplace modifications, and can also extend to setting up a conducive home office for employees with disabilities, covering items such as mobile computing devices, chairs with adjustable lumbar support or headrests, or software to magnify and read text in documents or on screen. By leveraging some of these technologies as enablers, more employers can provide work from home arrangements for their employees with disabilities to lower the barrier of employment, especially during this pandemic season. Employers can also learn more about the job redesign, job redesign tips and tools using our Job Redesign Toolkit, which is available on our website. So, just rounding off, in terms of supporting employers, I'd like to touch on the enabling mark as an opportunity for employers to embrace new norms and guide their forward action. Because the enabling mark doesn't just encourage employers to adopt best practices, the framework also informs and supports companies towards improving their disability inclusion practices to join other like-minded employers who have walked this journey and continue to do well in business. So the enabling mark assessment categories offer not just assessment categories, but also offer tips for employers to embrace and scale workplace disability inclusion. And the accreditation is tiered as well. Platinum, gold, and silver, with the platinum being the highest accolade that employers can strive towards as they improve their practices in workplace disability inclusion. And perhaps in closing, and just a nod to Pratima's point on disability inclusion as a new norm for businesses, we've seen from our work in supporting employers that the benefits can certainly outweigh costs in disability inclusive employment. Organizations become more empowering as they build teams that leverage different strengths. They learn to innovate as they adapt jobs and services to accommodate persons with disabilities. And they become more collaborative, being open to different perspectives, which is a crucial quality to have greater collective impact in this in the new norm.
Winnie, thanks. That's really comprehensive, and I think you've covered some really important points to highlight there, particularly things like the different role of stakeholders. So I'm going to hand back over to Ryan to open the floor now. So thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria, and to all our speakers. I think on the chat already. And there's like one more question that I would like to ask all of you, and that is particularly on your role in terms of, we are still in a pandemic, in a post-COVID world, as we may want to call it, in a new normal, and looking at that 80% of persons with disabilities, especially in Asia Pacific, are still like in rural areas. How do you think like we can reach the furthest in the marginalized spectrum, and what are your role on it? I think that would summarize, especially the context of digital technologies and all of that, all the questions that we have in chat that we haven't answered yet. So anyone, feel free to answer that question. Anyone who
Ryan,
would like yes?
sorry, I was just busy typing Sharina's response on the chat window.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I think one of the most impactful ways, I think, especially when it comes to, I think, picking up digital skills. So okay, I may have misunderstood the question. Would it be possible for you to repeat it, please?
Yes, in a post-COVID-19 world, hopefully we'll get there
Yes.
soon. What do you think is the role that you want to play in reaching the furthest in the marginalization spectrum, especially about, the role and opportunities as well as the risk that technology brings?
Thanks, Ryan. I think that's a great question, and I think the good news for all of us, I think, is in one of the good things to happen from COVID is that it's really broken down these barriers, and I think helped employers, organizations, really, address disability inclusion in a much better way. Because I mean, you can work from home. Everyone, technology is such a great enabler, and some of the earlier typical challenges that we faced around whether offices were accessible, some of those questions are already being reframed. So I think this is while the virus is definitely not a great thing, it has definitely helped to further, I think, action on disability inclusion. And I'd just like to give one story which really drives home this point. So I was approached by, a salesperson from UAE, and we got talking, and we were discussing about a particular opportunity in the UAE. And at some point, she mentioned that she was a person with determination. So that's how persons with disabilities are referred to. It's a very empowering term that's used in the UAE. And she mentioned that she was a person with determination, and she didn't have a job, before the pandemic, because once the employer knew that she was a wheelchair user, and therefore had accessibility needs. So invariably, the interview wouldn't go as planned, and she wouldn't get the job. And then suddenly, right, there were so many opportunities to do the exact same sales job from the comfort of her home, and and then she just got the job, and she's actually doing really well. So it was such an empowering story, which speaks about the power of technology and how technology is really going to, especially in a post-COVID world where some of the typical requirements typical workspace requirements are changing. And I think this is and with the progression of accessible technology, the digital accessibility, I think this is a great. I think it's all good, Ryan. That's my view on that.
To my mind, Ryan, it is a job that needs to be done, not just by private but public sector also. This is a strong conversation we need to bring to the table on how the digital economy can be accelerated, the digital skilling of communities. And I don't think it's just rural marginalized communities. I think it's across the board. We need to have a serious conversation on this topic. And it's just that COVID has brought the conversation much closer. It probably would have been something that we are talking across the next 4 years, 5 years, but today the reality is I find myself, because I do this work around, with Microsoft also, that we have these conversations with public sector and seriously sit down and think about what we need to do. And this is a job. I'm very heartened because most governments in our area now are actually talking about it. They are, there is awareness, and there is a deep need and understanding that we need to do this quickly. So it's not something which is 24 months, 48 months down. It's literally in the next few months. So I would love for every advocate in this call to start making our voices heard and make sure that we bring the conversation up and tell people that, look, we need to talk about skilling for communities across the spectrum, as well as digital skilling is super critical. It's something that all of us need to invest our time and effort and energy on.
I'd just like to add that organizations like ours are in a very fortunate position because we are really at the nexus of the individuals with disabilities, businesses who are looking for viable solutions, and as well as nurturing the community of disability employment professionals to support this effort. So this conversation on the future of work and new norms, I think, is something that's on everyone's mind. In fact, it was workplace disability inclusion, a new norm, was a topic that we explored at our last Inclusive Business Forum last year, and the dialogue continues today with our key stakeholders. So just like to add to that, which is that this is certainly an opportunity, as hard as the pandemic has been, but it's certainly an opportunity for new norms where we can include, truly include workplace disability inclusion and design for inclusiveness and accessibility. And that the future of work will hopefully see persons with disabilities increasingly as a valued talent pool that is both resourceful and resilient, because with the right job match and reasonable job accommodations, employers have the choice. It is a choice to harness the strengths and abilities of the employees with disabilities and focus on the work outcomes instead of how or where work can be done.
Wow, exactly, Winnie, exactly. And I couldn't agree more. Multi-party partnership is needed and collaboration is the key. And I will now hand this over to Shanti Jagannathan, Principal Education Specialist for Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department at Asian Development Bank, to close our session. This has been a very insightful and exciting session. Shanti, to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you all. It's been a really rich discussion. And I also found it very inspiring to just hear about what's happening out there. It bodes so well for the future. I'd like to thank Microsoft and Virtualahan for partnering with ADB to explore this landscape of how to shape a better employment landscape for people with disabilities. So many thanks to Ryan, Pratima, Winnie, Pratibha, and Maria for their excellent presentations and sharing. I have two takeaways that I want to put and a final point on action steps. First is that inclusion unlocks social and economic value. This is how we also at ADB look at integrating marginalized communities in our programs. Inclusion makes people with disability more productive, hence more active citizens, and they contribute to the economy and power growth. And this also reduces the burden of care or the social welfare approach and makes our societies really more equitable, and it also improves the well-being and happiness of all. So it's a win-win when we make people with disabilities more active participants in our economy. The second is that disability inclusion should be considered across the whole value chain, or like have a life cycle approach. For instance, if you want workplaces to be inclusive, we need to ensure that education and training institutions also promote and practice disability inclusion. So we need to look at how institutions are accessible and how they are importing training to suit the special needs of people with disability. So accessing good jobs also requires across the board, but specifically also for people with disabilities, requires active career coaching and counseling services so that people are able to tap the right kind of training or education that will help them to tap the right kind of jobs. Placement services then need to really incorporate the disability inclusion lens and also really stretch to provide any last mile bridging in getting a person with disability settled effectively in the workplace. So this should not be underestimated. Then comes the need for disability friendly workplaces, and we've heard so much good story around this. It's so inspiring. Disability friendly workplaces and work practices. The role of mentoring by strong disability champions cannot be overstated, as they will change the workplace climate for everyone, not just for people with disability. Friendly HR practices, on the job training and inclusion, where disability parameters for making them feel comfortable is more an ethos and a way of life rather than some kind of a must do kind of a thing. So I think these things that are already being practiced are really so inspiring. On to action points now. So it's really exciting to know that technology is going to unlock so much potential than was ever possible before. And all the tools and approaches that are now available to support inclusion. The technologies have unlocked unprecedented possibilities. So I think we should really think collectively and document and make available these tools that are already being deployed effectively to support inclusion and make them more broadly available to everyone, including stakeholders and public sector entities. And we also think about the kind of affirmative policies that might be needed going forward. So as Maria suggested, let's develop a knowledge base and a knowledge bank across the different partners and disseminate it more widely. So last, I'd like to give special thanks to Helen Osborne, who's been very quiet during the session, but she's been the prime motor in putting this discussion together and aligning all of us to look at this coherent set of issues. So really look forward to taking this dialogue forward with all of you and with Wendy and other colleagues to take this agenda ahead. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you so much, Shanti. Thank you so much, Shanti. And yes, I couldn't express enough my gratitude to everyone who contributed to this event. And if you can stay for 30 more seconds, I would like to ask you to turn on your cameras and unmute yourself for our final group picture. And as you do that, allow me to acknowledge the amazing team that put this webinar together. Thank you so much to Helen, to Lydia, to Jael, to the accessibility team, to Jeff and Brian, our sign language interpreter, Jeff, our video editors, to Jen, to April, and the rest of the team from ADB. Thank you so much. Let us unmute ourselves, turn on our videos. I think Jen used her magic power to turn on, allow other participants to turn on their videos, and then we will take a one large gallery photo. This is a very, very important discussion, and this is a powerful collaboration that we did today. We will follow up with you with more materials and some reports about the outcome of this webinar. And with that, maraming salamat, daghang salamat everybody. 1, 2, 3, smile. And one more. 1, 2, 3, smile. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you in the future ADB webinar series. Goodbye, and take good care. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, team.